Hello. Today I'm going to make a video talking a bit about the concept of socialism. Okay, I am going to have some notes here so that I'm a bit more precise and I'm not just talking out of memory, but I do know what these concepts are. I understand them, and the first thing I'm going to tell you is this: I am not a socialist. Okay, this is the very first thing I'm going to say, but that does not stop me of talking about the concept with as little bias as possible and explaining things to people because I think it's very important for you to speak about things even if they go against your own principles. Why is that? Because being a normal human being implies having your positions, having the way you think, your narrative, your personal narrative to be contested by facts and by other views of how society should be, for example, organized. Okay? Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is this: communism is not socialism. Anarchism, anarchism or anarchy is not socialism. Unions are not socialism. Socialism is a very old way of thinking that has assumed multiple forms over history, and that in its current form, it was organized around the 19th century, the 18th century, maybe. Okay, this is how things are. This is the first thing you have to put in the back of your mind. You have to stop to listen to people that call, for example, wanting to have healthcare or social care or whatever, wanting to have that to be socialists. That's bullshit. Okay? That's cultural wars that is transforming something into some kind of boogeyman. Okay? First thing. Now, what is socialism? Well, first of all, socialism is more than an economic system. Sorry, it's also a political philosophy, and it characterizes itself for having the society to have an ownership over the means of production, meaning a social in terms of society of as a whole to have ownership of the means to produce whatever that is. It may be food, water, energy. This is pure socialism. Now, and then there are several ways to apply this concept uh, in society. Okay, it can be a public ownership, meaning a state taking over everything. It can be a community where the individual communities that are a part of the state have that ownership of the land, of the means, whatever, or however you want to call it. Okay, it can be collective, meaning the state divides ownership of the means of production into collective associations that then take act like companies. Let's call it like this, so that you can understand, and it's easier. But you have to understand this. Community is one thing, collective is another thing, and then you can also have what we call a cooperative system. That was the dominant, for example, it was the dominant uh, aspect of socialism in Western Europe. Still to this day, there are still some things that are cooperative, meaning a group of people, for example, imagine you have uh, uh, you have a lot of, for example, I'll tell you how, for example, it still happens here with farming. All farmers, they are individuals, okay? Either individual farmers, people, no, guys, or companies, private companies that work in farming. But all of them are apart, for example, when it comes to uh, manage water for each individual business. There is a cooperative where everyone gathers and where they decide how are they going to use this resource, the water, for each individual farmer. Meaning, no one owns the river. Even if it passes through your land, you don't own it. The river is a property of the state, and the cooperative decides how the water is divided in order to have everyone be able to have sufficient water to do their business, or alternative means, whatever it's needed. Okay, this is a cooperative. In earlier days, there was a radical form of cooperative where, after the revolution, uh, groups of people, of farmers, individual citizens, took over private land. In one word, they stole it. This is one of the reasons why I don't like uh, socialism in this aspect that we here called communism. Because if it was fair to divide a part of the land that many times over the landowners just let it sit in order to value it, and they would sit in Lisbon or whatever wherever they were and collect the profits of renting the land out to anyone who rented, and that was not fair because they were not producing. They were not producing food. They were not producing wealth inside of the society. If it was fair for that land to be taken from them, it was fair. Sorry, it was fair. It was fair to remove that land from their property if they weren't doing nothing with it. Truth is, there were a lot of farmers that were actually producing wealth, and that should have been respected. And those that had their land removed, and here, many years later, the government recognized that it had been an illegal occupation, and they paid them back the value of the land that was taken from them. This is my point. You could say, my friend, uh, we need this land to produce food for the community, to sell, to feed ourselves. So it's not fair that you have that land sitting there and you are just renting it out. No, if you have land, you have to do something with it. For example, you can plant a forest on that land, plant a forest, sow a forest, and then use the forest as a mean of earning money. For example, a hotel, a rural, what we call here a rural tourism, where you can go and be in the countryside for a while, okay, and relax in nature, disturbing as little as you can the local environment. That is a way of valuing the land, okay? But it's another thing to have that land gaining value, like they are also doing now here with housing. This is going to make major problems. It's already causing major problems, and already there is going to be a change in this policy. I'm absolutely certain from what I heard the politicians talk about. That is one thing. That is greed. The other thing is you have your farm, you are exploring it, even if you're rich, even if you're earning a lot of money, but you're exploiting that land, you're providing jobs, you are providing wealth to the society, you are paying your taxes, then there's absolutely no reason for someone to come and no, you have too much land, I'm going to take this piece. No. And this is one of the reasons why I could never be a socialist in that aspect. Because I believe in private property, I believe in private rights, just like I believe in paying my taxes, just like I believe in peace and order. But in this aspect of people that were profiting off of others, my friends, or like people that leave houses to rot in cities where we need lodging for people, and then they are very annoyed because the government has issued already laws that state that we are going to take over the house, and they take over the house, they pay them the price by the meter according to a state specific chart that is not the same as the inflationary prices in the market. They kick them out, they renew the house, or they give it to someone or they sell it to someone to renew that house, and that house becomes into an apartment building. It turns into, if it's an old house, it cannot be changed. So they renew the entire house, then that house goes either, for example, to the city hall for the city hall to use that house, for example, to lodge people that need it, to rent it out to any company to make a hotel, or whatever, or a restaurant, whatever. That house becomes a source of income or housing for people that needs it. Okay? Now, let's continue. So, again, public, communal, collective, and cooperative. Okay? Four forms already of different things that you could call socialism. But each four forms easily adaptable to other systems. Because you have to understand this is a philosophy. It begins as a philosophy, and then it becomes an economical fact. And each country is so different that you could never have a uniform way of doing things. It's impossible because each country has its own specific cultural realities. Let's call it like this, or social realities. Better. Now, uh, socialism has a political ideology. It's always classified as left wing. And why is that? It's classified left wing to counter the right wing. The right wing believes in the most, and again, right wing policies are also not the same. You know? For example, fascism can be authoritarian, it can be harsh. For example, the system here in Portugal, the dictatorship, was mostly solely authoritarian. Despite the and I'm making this video in the 10th of June, which is the day of Portugal, our national day, the day of the country. I know people like to call it a lot of things, but it's basically the day of the nation of Portugal. Portugal as a nation. It's today, 10th of June. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear me say this, but the dictatorship was mostly an oligarchic system supported by the church, by the militaries, and by the industrial complex, the economical complex. Okay, so there was little room for social progression, but there was room for social progression. People with talent, if they were not against the regime, they would have more or less a normal life. People that spoke against the regime would have their lives turned into a living hell. But seldom people were executed. I know people like to paint this image of an atrocious regime that was hanging people in cells and doing this and doing that. But if it's true that that happened in occasions, in occasion, it was not the general aspect of the dictatorship. And I know this from speaking with people in first hand. Okay, I have minors in my family. True. I have I had a great uncle, and I heard them talking about it, and I hear my mom, of course, my dad, that during a miners' strike, okay, they were pretty beaten up. They were physically beaten up by the police, and this was be common. The the town where my mom comes from, the mining town, Aljustrel, was once literally invaded by the GNR, the Republican Guard, which is today the rural police, more or less. They literally invaded the town on horseback with the soldiers to quell a demonstration of people because people were revolting and they were tired of being oppressed, sometimes of being some of them being very poor. Thank God my family was not that poor, but they were not rich. My mom's family, she was raised with her grandparents there. They were not rich, but the town was literally invaded by the police, and the police entered and they started beating people. And the women grabbed their bags, filled them with rocks taken out of the pavement, and they attacked the police. And it all had to end with a compromise. The police returned the miners to their families. They were not deported to Africa, which would be probably be their destiny, and peace returned. So, to compare that with a regime like Putin that literally drags people out of their house and then they have an accident or they take a bullet to the head or get suicide or get poisoned in prison or whatever, it's completely different from comparing that with other authoritarian regimes. Both are bad. I'm not some kind of revisionist or someone that says that an authoritarian regime was good. No. But this is just to explain you how socialism evolved in so many different forms in Europe according to the society in which it grew. There are societies that were already very communal, for example, the Nordic countries, where it was easy to implement a strain of socialism that was more in the aspect of the government taking the helm. In sorry, in the UK, it also happened. A lot of things were concentrated in companies that acted in a capitalist way, but on which the government had some kind of control. And it so happens in some areas here also. And then there is that radical collectivization like you had in the Soviet Union. Okay, but let's uh, let's try to have some kind of I will try to speak about definitions also so that we can understand this a bit better. Now, there are difference. There are very great difference, for example, between a socialism that is a market socialism and a non-market socialism. A non-market socialism, as the name says, it wants to, and this is the principle, okay? I'm not saying that they were able to do this. I'm not absolutely saying nothing about it, okay? But it wants to stop and prevent the unpredictability of the capitalist system, where crises sometimes occur due to the events of a free economy. Inflation, deflation, you know, stock market crashes, all of that. So to do that, they absolutely control everything. That is the most radical form of socialism. That to me is communism. Okay. Now, market socialism is an entire different thing. Now, I'm going to try to explain this. I'm just gathering my thoughts because I'm speaking in English. It's a bit harder for me because if I was speaking in Portuguese or maybe even German, it would be easier. But in English, okay. Now, market socialism retains in its power, let's call it like this, the prices of things in terms of currency. It controls some certain factors in the market, and it also retains the idea of producing for a profit, meaning you don't want an inefficient economy, even if the state has a degree of control over it. Sorry. Even in this system, the state has to act like a company. It cannot it cannot lose money to produce. Whilst in the other system, they control and they dictate everything. There's no profit. Let's call it like this. Okay? There's viability or non-viability, but if the state decides to produce, I don't know, 1,000 pens, even if the state, even if you only need 500 pens, the state will produce 1,000 pens. Okay? Now, uh, now, if you know a gentleman named Keynes, uh, he established a series of economical principles that are still used in modern day economics. And this was combined with socialism to create what is the most common form of, let's call it, inspired by socialism movements, that is social democracy. Now, for example, in Portugal, socialists, the Socialist Party, sees itself as left, and the Social Democrat Party sees itself as right wing or middle, neutral, let's call it like this. Both of them are wrong. None of them is socialist. They are democratic movements, one leaning more to a to a more radical form of socialism, the Socialist Party, and another one leaning more to have a social intervention in the state, but maintaining the private intervention, let's call it like this, still in the society. What do I mean with this? Meaning you have a small state, okay, but a state that controls via targeting prices, via targeting social contributions, taxes, and this is the way the state controls. And also having control over key factors, like, for example, water, energy, these types of things. Okay? In order to, for example, allow, right now we have lithium deposits that are going to be explored, and a private company is doing it. But the state will have a control, number one, over the taxes, number two, over the way the exploration of the depots is done, and number three, how much of that wealth stays in the country. This is extremely important because you cannot have a system, for example, like the water companies in the UK, where you have groups of stockholders that are there to earn as much money as they can. And then they siphon that wealth outside of the country. And if you think that does not happen, then you are very naive. Or you have not read and understood what I, out here in Portugal, am able to read and see. Now, this form of a social democracy, which is the most common, for example, in Portugal, also in Spain, more or less, it's a bit different, but also in Spain, to a degree in France, and very similar to Germany and, in a sense, to the Nordic countries also. Even countries as different as Portugal and Germany have a lot in common in that regard. Maybe because German social democracy was also an integral part in the creation of the social democratic movements in Portugal after the revolution, has a counter to the radical socialism under the form of communism, because the Socialist Party here was never as radical as the Communist Party. Okay, you will have to understand. For example, the Social Party was also always a a party that defended democracy. Okay, and the communists now. The communists after the revolution, they even tried to install a Soviet movement, and they don't like to listen to me saying this, but I will keep on saying it because this is my opinion and this is what I saw, and I have no issues in saying it. I'm not offending anyone, but social democracy is the prevalent form here in Europe. Now, if you go to the history, and now right now I'm looking at it, you have a lot of, if you want to understand, if you want to read this and see all the sources, go down to old Marx and all of that, my friends, just do what I did. I'm not looking at my data in Wikipedia. I'm looking at the national source. But if you go to Wikipedia, you will see more or less the same. So now let's continue. The issue here is that when people more affiliated to the type of language that is coming out of the USA, where you call everything socialism, are morons. Sorry, plain and simple morons. There are people that do not understand what socialism is and the several types of socialism that exists. They look at socialism as the USSR. Remember, when I talked about, and this was why I had my little guidebook right here. When I talked about the several forms: public, communal, collective, or cooperative, corporations, I began this explanation for you to understand that you cannot call, for example, you cannot say it's a socialist move to have free healthcare. There is no free healthcare in Europe. You want to know why? Because you pay it with your taxes. The difference here is this: if you don't have money, okay, the state is still going to give you healthcare. Why? Social, society. We are like an old Germanic saying that the person that taught me German paganism used to tell me, family member that used to talk with me about this and that taught me that side of my family. A shield wall is only as strong as its weakest link, meaning we are a society. This is society. Several links, all of them very strong. This one is weaker. If you don't help this one, the shield wall breaks and society breaks. Okay? If you don't help the weakest link, even if they are parasites, even if they don't want to work, you force them to work in another form. Okay? But the weakest people in society need to have protection by the strongest one. The strong one is there to justify the weak. Okay? Because we are a society, we are a group. And if you want to classify socialism under any kind of general box that makes you feel a bit more comfortable in your way of thinking, think of it as a society that cares for all of its members. A society that tries to take specific uh, planned political, social, and economical measures that try to aid everyone. So you can have perfectly well, like we do, capitalist societies that have socialist policies. Why not? Here, for example, you can own whatever you want. You can work, you can achieve, but you are going to pay taxes. You are going to pay taxes on property, you are going to pay taxes on your car, you are going to pay taxes on your food, you are going to pay taxes while you are working, you are going to pay taxes so that you can have a pension, for example, so that you can have healthcare. You are going to pay and you are going to contribute to society. And the problem that we are having right now is that certain areas of our society are in crisis, okay? And there are changes occurring, and instead of focusing on the problem, like in the United States, people are focusing on the symptom, like immigration, for example, like crime, like, for example, poverty, like all of that. We are not focusing in the key issue that is we have weak societies that are focused on culture wars instead of being focusing in solving problems. Immigration can be solved with having it organized. And whilst in Europe we are doing that, in the United Kingdom, when I speak Europe, sorry, I'm talking about the EU, okay? Sorry, it's a habit. But when you hear me a word, whilst in the EU, this we are focusing on specific policies to control immigration, to have it done in a rational form. The UK is not, the US is not, and there are a couple of more states in the world that are also not doing it. For example, let me talk with you about the latest policies around here. So this is my word. Okay. For example, I have spoken about this, but I have talked about the fact that now, if you want to come here to work, number one, you need to have a job here waiting for you. And number two, you are not going to be able to bring your entire family here. Okay, if, for example, if you are married or you have kids, you can bring your wife and your kids, but you cannot bring your parents, your cousins, your dog, your cat. No, or beasts. No, you cannot bring that. Things do not work like that anymore. And this policy was needed because what was happening? People were entering through the weakest countries in the Union, and then they were spreading across Europe. And if some of them are honest and hardworking people, others are parasites. Just like, look, we have parasites here too, and we have parasites entering through the border. Okay? But does this mean we should do things like the Americans are doing, going on, around with patrols, causing chaos like they are causing right now in LA, picking up from people that are working in restaurants, in factories? No, 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 my friends. You do what we do. You create policies, and then you solve the problems that occur, that will happen. Look, that will always happen. I don't even know how many people that come from abroad that are jailed here, and then they are going to be deported. You know, there are English soccer and now I'm going to stress this: English soccer fans that are banned from entering in Portugal. Okay, if they are caught here, they are going to be deported. Most of the times, they are not even able to enter the country. Okay, and there are, look, a foreigner is caught illegally. If that person chooses to get out of the country voluntarily, all right, go ahead, take care of your business and get out. And then that person can leave and try to enter the country again through the legal routes. And we have legal routes, not like the UK that has none, or the USA, none. They say they have them, but right now they don't. Right now, you don't. And shut the hell up about that. I know perfectly well the what is happening. I know perfectly well how the law is being applied, because in that sense I can speak and say I know, because I went to the sources and I read it. Okay? Now, continue. That person gets out, and then the person can enter again. A person commits a crime. Well, depending on the crime, no, you are not going to deport someone or cancel the authorization of her being here for jailwalk or something, some shit like that. Okay? We're not savages. But you, what will happen? Your visa won't be renewed. You have to get out. If that person, for example, that is caught and says, "Oh yes, I will leave," and then he gets out and continues through trying to work illegally because you need paperwork even to work, to get medical help, medical aid, to have all of that. What will happen? Sooner or later, it can take days, it can take months, even years. That person will be caught. That person will be deported, and that person will be probably either banned for X amount of years from ever entering the country again, or permanently. It's as simple as this. The only way to control things is with facts and justice. It's not saying, oh, that won't work. Oh, they are all the same. You have to be radical. You have to do this. You have to do that. No. You know that Japanese concept of Ma, the sacred, that you even have in the. I learned it from martial arts, okay? But there is a concept. Let me try to explain this in English. It would be hard, but there will, whenever something happens. Sorry, these are allergies, okay? whenever something happens, you have to take a moment in between when whatever is the event happens and when you act. And that moment is called the ma, a sacred moment. Sacred in the sense that it's the time that you have to stop, breathe, and think and act with logic. Because, like the Stoics said, also said this funny, it's it's what happens to you, it's outside of your control. But how you react to it is absolutely in your control. And you are the one who has to take the adequate response. And what is happening right now is that people, instead of taking ma that moment that gives you clarity. No, I learned it when I learned martial arts. That right now, age 50, I'm returning to my martial art training, and already I'm losing weight. Already I'm reducing stress. Already I'm feeling better with myself. Okay, but you take that moment, that ma, and then you have that moment to think, how am I going to act? And there is nothing of that sort in all of these policies. A man arrives to the White House. Tariffs, 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 tariffs. No foreigner, no foreigner. You won't get in. You won't get in. Is this logic? If you would take a ma, he would do, for example, what I would do. Well, what I would have done. I need to bring manufacturing back into my country. How can I do it? I will talk with the companies, with the countries that are producing outside of my country. I will go to the car manufacturers and say, look, I want to create more jobs inside of my country. How can I help you to bring more jobs inside of my borders so that I can provide more jobs for the people in my country? Um, a, a little a little moment to think. And when you Americans start opening your mouth to speak about concepts like socialism, like communism, God, I'm very sorry. You do not take this ma. You do not take this break, this breather. And don't you look at me and think, oh, leftist bourgeois ideas, new age. I'm a fucking baker, my friends. You see these hands, okay? These are the hands of a person that works. Right now, I'm doing something completely different. But up to my 25 years of age, late 30s, this is what I've done. These hands have always worked every day of my life, ever since I was a kid. Okay? And the person that taught me most of the start of the things that I'm talking with you about was my dad. That age nine, age nine was working barefoot in the middle of winter in Portugal, and he was working like an adult to help his mom and his dad to raise his brothers and sisters. And that did not stop him from being an educated man to educate himself. That did not stop him from with my mom also, of course, but to show me art, music, okay, and even little things like this, like knowing how to distinguish between what socialism is and what communism is, and what the different types of communism is. My father, for example, he saw nothing bad with cooperative communism, socialism, because a corporation, what what is a corporation? Is meaning workers, people. For example, this system, my dad had bakeries in this place. Okay, another person had a bakery in the other person, in another town. They came to an agreement. The other person, I won't sell, I won't go and flood, I won't go and enter in your market and steal your business. And my dad, I won't go into your market and steal your business. Okay, and this was not cartelling. This was not monopoly. This was nothing of the sort. If there was more business, for example, if my dad was doing a better job and they were buying our products, look, it's not our business. But we were not deliberately trying to destroy another business. That was not the key business here was to keep the prices balanced according to what the government asked us to do so people could afford their goods, and also to have some kind of balance to keep the social economical balance of both towns in this case in an equilibrium, so that the people that the competitor had working for him, those people will keep on having a job and keep on having a livelihood. And same here. And this is how socialism is applied in Europe. It has absolutely nothing to do with state control. The state being regulating sayings does not mean that the state is preventing you from doing your saying. Maybe sometimes it's a bit slower than in systems like in the America, of course. But to have the benefits that we have due to the application of this system that has a lot to do with the history of Europe, with with the wars, with the political dictatorships that we had, with all of this. You know, did you see how the Soviet Union left Eastern Europe in shambles? And now you have a couple of people trying to, oh, it was so good, oh, we had everything in this and that. Why? Because people create mythos of things. People, for example, look at their childhood and they only remember what was good, and then they forget what was bad. No, they forgot that time, I don't know, they went into the cookie jar, mom caught them and spanked the hell out of them. People forget details, or people forget wanting to buy a bike, I don't know, whatever, and didn't have the money and tried to steal the bike, whatever. That type of shit. People forget all about that. People forget what was bad. They create a narrative, and it was very good. So, according, for example, to Mr. Putin, the Soviet Union, the end of the Soviet Union was a tragedy. It was a tragedy. Go tell that to the people that I saw sitting in the couch in my living room back home with my dad and my mom and watching the Berlin Wall fall. And my dad looking at me and saying, I never thought I would see this happening. Then try to say that to those people, to their faces. And now you have a couple of idiots there that are voting for those idiots in the far right that are idiots. They are idiots. But those idiots are a symptom of a poorly organized state. just like MAGA and Trump are the fruits of a poorly organized United States. You have rampant wealth, you have rampant poverty, you have a, a number of issues in your country that create this. And why don't people talk about this is beyond me. I think it's fear. I honestly think it's fear. It's fear of taking responsibilities for your own actions. Look, I take responsibility for my actions. You have to. The only way you are able to grow up is to understand that sometimes you're a damn idiot. You have to have that honesty with yourself. You have to be honest. You have to say, I should have not said that. I should have not done that. And then you got to do things like I was telling you. Take that, think about it. Before you open your mouth to spew up some shit, think about it. It's not that easy. It's not, sorry. Yes, it's not easy. I know it's not easy, but it's not that hard to stop for a moment and think before you act. Again, going to say something that a lot of people also are not going to like, but I'm going to say it. If Mr. Trump had left all of those ICE problems to the LAPD, none of this shit would be happening. And if he had, for example, instead of sending agents of ICE to do this and do that, he would send guys in suits that would sit in a room and that would not interrogate but question immigrants, question you, why are you here? How long have you been here? What are you doing? They would be able to differentiate between the guy that's running away from La Migra, but that's working in the restaurant for a salary most Americans would, would not even consider doing it. No, they'd rather be YouTubers or whatever. But someone has to be in the restaurant. And if you think AI will change any of that shit, you are sadly mistaken. People are transforming AI into some kind of mythical monster that will do the same thing as they believed electricity would do. I would advise you to do that. Take a look at the history of electricity and see, for example, how people perceive electricity would do this and do that, and change this and change that, and then what they considered nuclear energy would do this and would do that. We adapt to all technologies that we discover. Will AI transform certain things into irrelevant jobs? Yes, of course. Mainly in those menial jobs that can be performed by mechanized systems with AI, like storage, like factories, like all of that. But to use AI, for example, to harvest information and to create art, it's like using a nuclear bomb. Me personally, whenever someone tries to present to me some kind of art made by AI, I say that is not art. Oh, but no, I'm just using a mean and a tool. No, that is not AI. A little kid using MSC Paint to paint something in the computer and creating a digital copy of that, that is more art than any beautiful generated AI piece of art, be it written, drawn, whatever. AI cannot, for example, do as I did to draw by memory monasteries here that me and my parents visit, and I would draw them by memory, and I would give my own interpretation. I would see the light, I would see the texture of the materials. It would be my interpretation. Can I replicate this? Yes, but is it alive? No, it has no soul. It's like a Xerox, a copy. Okay, Xerox of something. Okay, started with socialism, but I had to make this video. This is just one of the first videos I'm going to make about these concepts in order for people to understand that they should not be opening their mouths to talk about such concepts without knowing what in fact they are. Look, it's as simple as this. You talk about healthcare in Europe, and there is always an American moron, oh, you're socialists. Oh, that's socialist Europe. Oh, you're doing this. Oh, you're doing that. Oh, you're being invaded. Okay, go to the percentages of immigrants. Compare them to the majority of people. Okay? Oh, they are more responsible for crimes. Okay, go to the police records. Oh, they don't record it. Yes, they do. Go and see it. Oh, ICE is doing an excellent job. They are targeting the criminals and the illegals and this and that. No, 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 they are not. Of all of those people, maybe 5% are illegals. The other 95% were just people working. And people that your state is responsible to regulate their presence. You don't want to make them American citizens? Don't. Give them like there are a lot of people around here. They're not Portuguese citizens. They don't vote, but they still have rights because they are paying taxes. Notice they go, so if they pay for a healthcare, they have healthcare. Okay, if they pay to use the roads, no, if they pay their car taxes, they can also use the roads. Why not? They are paying for it. There are a lot of Portuguese immigrants all over the world. The United States, I think it's about, I don't know how many there are, but I know that descendants of Portuguese is around a million and something. Plus the mingled in the culture pot. So what? Don't if these people are working, if these people are paying their taxes, don't they deserve to have rights? I'm not saying to give them the right for vote. No, in that aspect, I'm completely and utterly dogmatic. Only a citizen of the state has the right to vote on the questions that's in the state. If you are not a citizen, shut up. You can complain about your rights if you believe they are not you are paying too much taxes because you're a foreigner or whatever or this or that. Complain. Complain and there are authorities to answer you. But if you're not a citizen of the state, and in this aspect I cannot be a socialist, I cannot. Because they want the pure socialism, wanted a society without states, without borders, just groups of people living together in and holding their hands like in a John Lennon and Yoko Ono song. No, that shit doesn't work. It's a very beautiful concept. It's a very utopian concept, but it does not work because people are animals. I am an animal. You that are watching me, you are also an animal. We are all beasts, more or less, uh, domesticated by society. So utopias never work, and I don't give a crap if you tell me that you believe in that shit. I don't. You are free to believe in it. I don't. Okay, but again, when you are talking about socialism, remember that you are talking about social ownership and that this is a concept that can have a million ways of interpreting. You could have a form of socialism in the United States, for example. You already have a partial form of socialism, for example, in the counties. in electing your police officers, okay, in electing your mailman, in electing your mayor. That is a form of socialism. You would not have that without socialism. The state owning, for example, water, the forests, the coastlines, the resources inside of the country, how they are organized and how they are distributed, even if to private companies, that is all socialism. You have a in US, now I'm going to talk specifically about US. In the US, you have a healthcare system that only works for a few because you don't have what we have here, which is chilled wall. How can you have social cohesion if you have people that are not protected and that are treated like garbage? And I don't care if they're white, if they're black, if they're polka dot pink. Don't give a crap about that shit. They don't want to work. Okay, what are you going to do? Force them to work. Okay? Oh, you want to have money to do this or do that? Work for it. But if that person needs healthcare, you don't deny it. It's a it's a social responsibility. And this is what socialism brings to capitalism. Liberal capitalism is a disaster. Market capitalism is a disaster. It drains economies. It destroys economies. It for example, it has caused this mentality that we have has caused the problems we have with global warming. We should we should have ditched fossil fuels for decades, and we still have not done it because it's not economically viable, like they say, and that's all bullshit. It's to give enough time to the companies and groups that have their money invested in fossil fuels to grab that money and transfer it to some other technology. And they want to continue to collect their taxes from that technology. Keep on leeching on you. When we could all be driving cars that could last for 100 years and that needed no fuel. We could have that. We could have technology enough, okay, to colonize the moon, to do an enormous number of things that we don't do because the entire world still does not have this mentality of the chill wall. Right now, there are very few areas of the world where people have this mentality. And unless we all start, I'm not saying I'm not saying it has absolutely to be this system, but a similar way of it's the way of thinking that is important. In the sense of considering society as a whole, a part of society, not having elements in the society, some on in each other's backs like leeches. Sorry again. And if I'm not a socialist, like I told you from the get-go, I cannot be a socialist in this purest form. I do indeed have this social sense that we need this way of thinking. We need this philosophy because, or else, we are going to follow emotions. We are not going to follow facts, and we are all going to be extinct. The future of humanity. Look, creatures in this planet either adapt, evolve, and change, or they go extinct. Have no doubts about it. You see the little birds in the sky? They were once dinosaurs. Like another guy that I sometimes really like to hear, an English guy, one angry pagan. Go check his channel, one angry pagan. Like he says, and he's a big history buff, paleontology and all of that. Change is inevitable. Okay, He's one of the few people that I see online that understands that we as a group, we have to change, we have to adapt. Okay, we have to grow. You know, uh, societies that remain the same, two things happen: either they become obsolete and are destroyed by other societies, or they destroy themselves. Okay, we need to have another way of thinking. We need to have a non-religious way of thinking. And the Americans are going to attack me again. Okay, go ahead. I have no issues with it. But we have to go to a society that takes religion and puts it where it belongs, in my private conscience, in my ideas, not in society. Okay? You are not going to burn a book because you think it's offending your society or it's offending some part of your culture. No. Instead of burning the book, close it. Don't read it. Instead of attacking a person that is not a part of your way of seeing things, instead of doing that, don't speak with the person. Don't attack him. Don't be hostile. Just leave them alone. And their duty is to do exactly the same thing to you, to leave you alone. Okay? We don't need to have a society where people are emotional pit bulls, always ready to lunge at you and attack you. What is happening right now in LA is precisely that. You have attack dogs in both sides. The protesters, they are right to protest, but they are turning into attack dogs too. The ICE, attack dogs. The president, attack dogs. Everyone is being an animal instead of being a person. Instead of taking that ma moment, okay, and relax. See what the issue is, my friends. God's sake. But no. All I get from American media is conspiracy theories, some laughing, some crying, some screaming, and all of this started with a video about socialism. For God's sakes. Well, now, thank you if you were patient enough to listen to my rambles, and I hope you have an excellent day wherever you are.